Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
Well, we have strong suspicions that there are nationalistic motives behind these crimes. We'll just have to wait in the next few hours. All the facts will be given to the public. But as you heard, the Prime Minister said he was going to bring the perpetrators to justice very quickly, and he has. One thing I can assure you, Shannon, that if these are Jews who are going to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, if they perpetrated these crimes, they will not be hailed as heroes by Israeli political leaders. There will not be public squares in Israel that will be named after them. Little schoolboys and schoolgirls in Israel will not emulate them as heroes. And that's exactly what we have on the Palestinian side.
And the Israeli ambassador to the United States just differentiating the two societies, the Israeli society and the Palestinian society. Joining us now is Jonathan Tobin, columnist and senior online editor of Commentary magazine. Jonathan, of course, since that interview from the Israeli ambassador, or done with the Israeli ambassador, we now have suspects that have been captured by the Israelis, that are Israelis, that are Jewish, that have been, three of them, I believe, have confessed to the crime of kidnapping and burning the body of the Palestinian teenager. And to show further the difference between the two governments and societies, Benjamin Netanyahu called the father of the little boy and swore that justice will be done. Of course, on the other side, the three teens who were murdered, the Israeli teens, their kidnappers are still at large. And I haven't heard the State Department demand an explanation from the Palestinians on the young man with the dual citizenship who was killed.
Yeah, you're right. Obviously, there is a terrible disconnect here. Now, let's first, state up front. These are two terrible tragedies. The loss of the Arab teenager is as terrible and as much to be grieved as the loss of the three Jewish teenagers who were kidnapped and then murdered by Hamas.
Absolutely.
The ambassador obviously drew a very clear moral distinction between these two acts, which is, on the one hand, the kidnapping of the three Jewish teenagers was widely cheered in Arab social media by the Palestinians. They all thought it was a good thing. This was something heroic, something that furthered their national struggle, and had the sort of a consensus support. Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leader, actually got into trouble with a lot of his constituents for saying that it wasn't a good thing. What's happened with the one Arab teenager who was murdered by these despicable people who did this is that this is something that is condemned by the overwhelming majority of Israelis, and it is something, and as one of our writers on Commentary said this morning, they're not going to be exchanged, for any Palestinians. They're going to stay in jail, and but even as we make these clear moral distinctions, the problem is that it muddies the waters, and it allows the Palestinians to claim, hey, we're the same as the Israelis, they're no better than us, and that this is just tit for tat. Well, there's a grain of truth in there, and that obviously, two murders, murders are bad no matter who's doing them. But what the Palestinians are doing is exploiting this crisis and exploiting this crime. Because in the last few days, 150 missiles have been shot by Hamas.
Well, that's the other issue. And by the way, of course, Abbas, he denounced the murder of the three Israeli teens, but that's because he had to. If they ever find out who did it, and if they were ever let out of jail, he'll name a soccer stadium after them, the way he's greeted the terrorists who have come home, who have the blood of Israeli children and women all over their hands. He hugs them, he kisses them, and then they name called them martyrs and name stadiums after them. So
right.
It's all a front, it's all a joke, it's all ridiculous. But it's only possible with a media that calls it tit for tat, that calls it back and forth, that equates the two as exactly the same. When you're right, the big issue here is that rockets are falling, I think 300 in the past few days, from the Gaza Strip into Israel, purposely, an act of war, and Israel has responded. But as you write in your piece, it's not the moment for restraint against Hamas. But I don't know that Israel has or ever had or ever will have the stomach to finish off Hamas like they didn't have the stomach to finish off Hezbollah.
Well, that's quite true. It's a complicated matter, and I don't envy Benjamin Netanyahu his dilemma with this, as with many of his dilemmas, because quite frankly, Hamas is gaining from this crisis. Hamas committed a terrible murder. Their people murdered 3 Jewish kids in cold blood, acting on behalf of their goals. Yet they are the political winners in this because it allows them to show Palestinians that they're the ones who are fighting, who are killing Israelis. And the sad thing is that the dynamic of Palestinian politics has never been one where the peacemakers got the advantage. It's always been the people who killed the most got the advantage.
And now Jonathan, you could blame the United States too.
Get back.
You could blame the United States too because they're supporting this so-called unity government in the face of the killings by Hamas.
That's right. The United States had a chance to brush back the Palestinian Authority and to say, you're not going to get any more money from us as long as you're partnering with these Hamas terrorists. And this isn't a figure of speech. The United States government still considers Hamas rightly to be a terrorist organization, yet they are in partnership with Abbas, and they're the ones who are committing these acts of terror, as well as shooting across a border into Israel, and they're getting away with it. And what Netanyahu fears, that's why this is such a tough choice. This is why the leaders get paid the big bucks, is that he also knows that if he launches even a large-scale strike into Gaza, that Hamas will immediately gain more political leverage vis-a-vis Abbas, will get more popular among Palestinians, especially even in the West Bank. And he's worried about doing that. It's like there are no good options here for Israel.
Well, I know, but
you rightly say Israel should try to finish Hamas the way it didn't finish Hezbollah. Yet I think a lot of people in the Israeli government don't think that that's an option. They don't think the Americans will let them, and they're not sure how they would even do it because they don't want to go back and and go back and be in control of Gaza.
I know. I just know that if the Allies had fought World War II this way, I'd be speaking. Well, I wouldn't be here, but if I were here, we'd all be speaking German right now in the United States.
This is not the way to win a war.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely. Hey, Jonathan, great talking to you, sir. As always, thank you very much, and keep up the good work.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Jonathan Tobin, ladies and gentlemen. It's difficult. No doubt it's difficult. Because if Israel were to try to annihilate Hamas, civilians would die. But it's the civilians who elected Hamas in the Gaza Strip. They're launching rockets. Imagine Mexico or Canada was launching rockets into the United States every day. Would we sit back? Would we do nothing? Would we launch pinprick responses? Or would we go all out and stop the bombing? I don't know. We're coming back with more. Don't go away.